Welcome back, everybody. We have an exciting episode with nonprofit Win the Saints CEO David Peterka and board member Kayla Hatcher here with us. Thank you, David and Kayla, for coming on with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. So David's got a background in Christian ministry, an emphasis on intercultural and urban missions, and then Kayla background in ESF and permaculture and photography. So let's jump right into your background, David, and how you started the mission, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds good. Yeah, let's see, just got a general studies degree from college after 2 years, and then had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And so I actually took a year and a half off from college. And a good friend of mine in high school, when he went into college, went into filmmaking, and he was a couple years older than me, graduated and wanted to make a documentary on the causes and solutions to extreme poverty. And so he invited me to be a part of that project. So kind of in this year and a half off, we made a documentary called What Matters with a question mark. And it's free on YouTube if anyone might be curious to watch it. And we just did a bunch of research on the causes and solutions to extreme poverty as we lived in extreme poverty ourselves. And so just had a lot of really interesting experiences, traveling for about 4.5 months through 15 different countries. And then just to kind of summarize very briefly, at the age of 21, I'm still just kind of spending some time again as a Christian. I entered into an extended fast of 21 days, just seeking direction from the Lord over my life, and stayed up in my basement all night on the 21st night, not because I wanted to, but just because I felt a conviction to just, not do the easiest possible thing at the end of the fast, at the end of not eating any food for 21 days. I wanted to go to bed real early and wake up at 4 a.m. so I could start eating again. But yeah, just ended up, spending about 6.5 hours journaling and praying and reading through the book of Romans. And just through the course of that night, I do believe that God just shared his heart over the injustice of human trafficking and sexual exploitation back, in 2009. And so that night just kind of, changed the whole course of my life, and everything that I'm doing right now with Win the Saints is because of that one night. And so, ended up going and getting a 2-year degree in intercultural and urban missions.
Awesome. And then you founded the mission, what, in 2011, I think I read, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the fall of 2011. I was finishing up my senior year in college, or I think that I was actually still in college I finished in December because I started halfway through the year, my junior year. And over our spring break in 2011, my father and my pastor and I actually took a trip to Malawi. That was our first trip that we went to Malawi. Over the course of this 2 years while I'm in college, again, going back to 2009, before I started this kind of bachelor's degree, I had no idea, where in the world I might do missions work. I did feel a call to international missions, but just spent a lot of time over the course of this 2-year period, just kind of praying, seeking direction, and kind of strangely enough, Malawi just kept coming up in my life. There were a total of 6 different, seemingly totally random occurrences of Malawi. And by the 4th one, I kind of started thinking, this may not be a coincidence. This could potentially be the way that the Lord is leading me to this country. And so, ultimately, in March, we sent out 6 emails to every organization that we could find in Malawi that was doing some type of work with gender-based violence in Malawi already. We only heard back from one person, the founder of the Malawi Human Rights Resource Center. And so we flew halfway around the world to meet one person, pretty much. And I just hoped that it would work out. It was probably the scariest day of my life, leaving, because I'd been telling people that I felt like the Lord was, communicating to me and leading me to this place. And I thought, what if we get there and this one woman's like, well, I don't know, we already have a dozen safe homes, or we don't really need something like that, or whatever. They were just yeah, what if it just doesn't work out and we come back? It's like, well, I guess we need to pick another country and try again. But, you know, we sit down to dinner with her on the day that we land. So we get there, you know, a Sunday afternoon. We're only there until Friday, and then we're coming home. She essentially, you know, responded to our email and said Monday through Friday I'm booked, you know, and so I can only meet you, you know, a couple hours after you land from flying for, you know, 30 hours. And so we were like, fantastic, you're the only connection really that we have in this country. And so, yeah, we just sit down and explain to her that we believe the Lord has called us to open a long-term trauma counseling safe home, and ask her, is that something that's needed in this country? Is there something already like it that maybe we can partner with and add value to? Or if there is not, is there any way, you know, would you be able to kind of point us in the right direction as to where that might best be located? And her jaw drops open. She says, for the last 14 years of my life, I've been trying to build something exactly like that in this country, and we have failed to find the resources to do it. I'll do whatever I can to help you. So she clears her schedule Monday through Friday. We spent every day that week with her. He introduced us to the senior chief of the city that has the highest ratings of gender-based violence in Malawi, because they had just gotten funding in 2010 to do a countrywide survey on gender-based violence, and had told the senior chief, as soon as we get resources to build a safe home, we're going to come here. And then we show up, you know, months later. And so yeah, you know, skipping ahead years, we now run the first and only long-term trauma counseling safe home in the country of Malawi.
Spoiler alert, it worked. I love it.
It worked.
That's awesome. Yeah. So even just jumping into that kind of current mission, and not mission, but projects you have going on, and kind of some struggles, or kind of give us a day to day or some high level of, you know, the situation with women in the country and kind of average age, and, you know, kind of some more details on that. What's really going down?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as Win the Saints, we have 57 Malawian staff members that run everything with the ministry. We have 4 dormitories in February. We just opened our 4th dormitory. Each dorm houses 18 girls. So we're actually, we're still kind of slowly working our way up to our maximum capacity of 72 from, you know, 54 from when we had 3 dorms. So we're at 61 right now. We also run a school, an elementary and middle school for the girls in our program, because they're all, you know, under the age of 16 and under, sometimes as young as, you know, 3 years old. All the girls get referred to us from what's called the victim support unit of the police station. And so there are cases of what they refer to as defilement. So it's any type of, you know, sexual abuse that a girl has gone through. It's been discovered that she's maybe experiencing on an ongoing basis in her home. You know, they're not all trafficking cases. It's not just a home only for trafficking cases, but it is, you know, girls who have been abused sexually. Some of the girls obviously, you know, have been trafficked for that purpose, or forced into prostitution, or, you know, freed from brothels, things like that. And so, yeah, kind of the reason why we were pointed in the direction of where we are, right in the central region of Malawi. It's an hour north of the capital city, which is Lilongwe. And the central region is actually the most fertile of the whole country. And back when I was doing research, you know, way back in 2011, 2010 on Malawi, I remember reading that tobacco is the country's main cash crop, and it brings in around 71% of the country's income. So it's you know, a very poor nation, kind of bouncing in and off on and off of the top 10 poorest countries in the world, depending on, you know, what type of way, you know, there's different ways you can kind of rank poverty, but yeah, it's just, you know, not a very wealthy nation, and tobacco being their main cash crop doesn't bring in a whole lot as their main export. So we were pointed in the direction of Bonella, the city that we're in, because it's right in the middle of the 2 main tobacco auction trading floors in the country of Malawi. So tens of thousands of farmers will harvest their tobacco, they'll dehydrate it, and then they'll kind of travel from their farms to Bonella. It's just, you know, loaded with tons of what they call guest houses, hotels, where these farmers will stay. They'll travel 45 minutes north to the tobacco auction floor there, sell some of it, or maybe 30 minutes south to the other tobacco auction floor, see where they can get the best price, sell some of it. And they're just kind of constantly back and forth, taking a little more tobacco to sell, to live on. And so, essentially kind of these tens of thousands of farmers are away from their families. They got a little bit of money, and they kind of are celebrating the sale of their tobacco. And so it just kind of made the city that we were in just internationally known as being the place that grown men go to, sleep with young girls. So it just has, raised levels of sexual abuse in the city. And that's, the main reason why we were kind of pointed in that direction to work there. So I know I didn't answer all of your questions, but
that was a good answer. No, that's
cool.
Of why you are where you are, and that's a good answer. So,
Awesome.
So let's get in a little bit more into fruit production, how you're using that to support the people in your program, the people working there. Maybe a good time to introduce Kayla here. She's got a background in food system permaculture and has worked for Eco International in the past. So I'll let you kind of intro her, David, and how she got involved, and we can roll into that conversation.
Yeah, Kayla, I want to say, I always forget the year. Was it 2019?
I believe so. I also can't quite remember, but yes.
Yeah.
Like officially, I think 2019.
Yeah. And that's when you came to Malawi. Is that right?
Oh, yes. 2019, I was there.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. She came for 3 or 4 months, I would say.
Yeah.
Or was it even longer? Yeah. Yeah. So one of our actual current board members, which was one of my professors at St. Louis Christian College where I went, she was the math for nonprofits teacher, a woman named Marilyn. And so, she was a good friend of Kayla's. And so I, took this math for nonprofits class as I was kind of moving toward starting a nonprofit. And so she ended up joining as our treasurer. And then as we were kind of looking to grow and expand our board, she recommended Kayla. So that's how we originally, met. Years ago. I met Marilyn in 2011, so probably not too long after that, I met Kayla as well. So we've known each other for a while, but as far as her kind of joining the board and coming to Malawi and spending a number of months and working, in our farm, that's kind of more of the specific history of that. And so, you want to take over and explain a little bit more of your background?
Yeah, you're great. Yes, so as David said, my first time physically in Malawi was in 2019. It was beautiful to see how much land is there and what is being done. While I was there, I got accepted for the internship in ECHO. And it actually is why I left Malawi. It kind of cut my planned time there short. And prior to that, basically over the past 10 years, I've been slowly studying, and whether it be working hands-on with other farmers in different countries or in the US, or taking micro courses in different places, such as the courses at ECHO or ARI, or with Permaculture for Refugees by Rosemary Morrow. Kind of trying to piece things together and learning indigenous wisdom alongside locals in different regions. And so it's a little scattering of that has been brought into my passion with Win the Saints. I just had on a trip with something called the World Race I did in 2013. It kind of shifted my heart back into environmental work from photography and teaching ESL, because I noticed in all the different countries that we were going to, no matter what injustice the organization we were partnering with was experiencing, agriculture was somehow at the center of it. Whether it was contributing to it or influenced when it was fluctuating. In seeing this, it just brought me back to God's heart. Like, our first authority was given in the garden over creation, alongside creation, using it for abundance and respecting it and understanding it to understand God's heart for us more. And I think us stepping away from that has highly influenced a lot of the injustices that do exist in the world. And as David like very clearly explained, the tobacco trade and international influence is also a big part of that. While being open to an international world for trade, it also brings in a lot of dynamics that weren't there historically in agricultural systems. This high emphasis of concentration of people in one space and the reliance on one source of income that can be really great one year and really poor another. Especially right now with tobacco, their biggest trade in Malawi being with Germany, Russia, and Ukraine. So two of those obviously being in war right now, how is that going to influence the tobacco industry, and how is that going to influence the farmers, and then how will that influence the exploitation of the girls? Yeah, so everything is kind of interconnected, and so trying to touch those intersections and how we can bring healthy kingdom and healthy agriculture into those spaces.
So what kind of is the plan, or what do you have in place already for, diversifying crops and stuff like that for the community and trying to combat that singular income from tobacco production?
Just kind of briefly what it is that we're, doing right now on the land that we have. We were given by the senior chief, in Ponela, actually about 11 acres worth of land, just totally for free. He just said, in no way am I proud that I'm kind of the highest level of this traditional authority in this city that has the highest ratings of gender-based violence in Malawi. And if you can come and bring the first and only long-term trauma counseling safe home in this country, or in this country, into our city, and help to maybe change the reputation that this city has, as being referred to as the armpit of Malawi, then that would be incredible. And we're willing to sacrifice and contribute all of this land for you to build this safe home. And so we started there on that land. We farm probably not quite three quarters of that. We started planting 260 fruit trees, 12 different kinds of fruit, grafted trees. Just kind of wanted to plant whatever we could and just try a bunch of stuff. And I'm not an expert in agriculture, and it was before Kayla was getting more involved, and so it was like, let's do everything. And so yeah, we farm vegetables, just tomatoes and onions and stuff that is commonly obviously consumed in the safe home. A big part of what we do with the agriculture, with the animals that we have and things like that, is to try to generate things that can be consumed and cut down on the monthly expenses of running the safe home. So we, on that land, let me go then into, we purchased land about 300 yards away, just about 2.5 acres, where we built our school. We farm about half of that as well. And then after the school was running for about 2 years, we ended up getting an opportunity to purchase all the land in between the safe home and the school. So we added another 6.5 acres. We have a total of around 21 acres now. And that is a future proposed site for a high school. But it's totally empty for the most part. So we've been farming all of that. Mostly with corn, just because their main staple food, that Malawians eat for 95% of every meal is called sima, and it's just ground up corn. That's kind of the consistency of Play-Doh, and tastes like grits. And that's just, Malawian just believes that if I haven't eaten sima in a meal, then I haven't eaten yet. Like, they're just kind of expecting, where's the sima if a meal doesn't have sima? It's very dense, it's very filling. And so yeah, we, definitely plant a lot of other things, vegetables, and we've started moving into cows. We're up to 7 cows now, and raising pigs. We have 33 pigs. We just got this new special breed that gives birth to, I think it was 18 and sometimes even 20 something pigs, which was crazy to me. So yeah, we just had one of them give birth, and all of a sudden our pig population exploded quite significantly. We have some rabbits. We usually have just maybe a dozen rabbits at a time. And then we also have chickens, usually around 30 to 40 chickens for eggs and things like that. Yeah, so we just kind of have a bunch of different stuff. We have a farm manager that oversees it all. And yeah, in some ways it's kind of hard without having to pay a significant amount of money in salary to hire someone that's really experienced. It's kind of hard to find someone that has, just experience and a good level of education. Education in Malawi as a whole, is not that great. And I've always been really curious to implement and better understand farming God's way. I think it has a few different names, but that's the kind of the term that I learned. And I was always kind of trying to push our farm manager to explore some of those things, but it was always just kind of, as you may know, in a lot of kind of developing nations, they just kind of have one way of doing things, and it's very hard to get them away from that. Especially if you're the one trying to get them to do something that they're not used to, and it's not really their idea to explore that and try that. So we actually just for the first time this last year, we planted about a third of our farm with just non-GMO, kind of organic seeds that we found within Malawi, which was a shock, that we could actually find those. I was amazed. So we just wanted to kind of explore how that would do, and hopefully move into farming all of our corn with those seeds, and try to integrate some other things. Soybeans are probably the next, other than tobacco, which is for the export, what they consume. Soybeans would probably be the next thing. So yeah, that's just kind of a layout of what it is that we have going on. So
Brandon, do you have any questions before I hog some more time?
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. And I have just a quick story to share. I was doing soccer for a long time after college, and I actually traveled to South Africa, so North South Africa, in a town called Polokwane, I guess is how you say it. But I guess it was pretty close, and there were some people there from Malawi as well. So it was fun to I can get a sense of the environment in some ways, and there were some amazing people there as well. But I guess what came to my mind too is just that in many ways, and not to say this is the cure-all or anything, but the connection to food and the connection to having diversity and having that sort of on the ground experience is sort of the solution in many ways, right? It seems like, if we can diversify the farmer's income, and we can teach them and have them learn different ways of not relying just on this cash crop, that could be part of the initial way of getting them off of that sort of train. And then I imagine, and I guess you alluded to it as well, but the girls have a chance to plug in and connect, and that's probably part of their healing process, right? So I just found that really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've kind of explored getting the girls involved in helping us with the farming, but we had to very quickly realize that we had to avoid any kind of child labor type of stuff. We're like, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't have them working in our farm because that could look really bad. But yeah, we do want to help train them. A big part of what we do in our social work department is family empowerment programs, where we train the parents. We have the parents come and we train them in raising chickens and raising pigs and farming, and how to just kind of how to best do those things. And we kind of give them some of that initial capital that they need to be able to build that a collar, if that's what you call it. That's what we usually call it in Malawi, 4 pigs or 4 chickens, give them some feed, give them stuff like that for them to eat and start. And so we'll usually give them a male and female pig, and then when they mate and have babies, we'll usually take that one boy and one girl back, so that we can just kind of continue that program. That's one of the big reasons why we have some of those, chickens and pigs that we keep just kind of at a low number, is to also help parents have a better source, a more reliable source of income. Because we just found we were, graduating girls out of our year-long program to a home that, can't afford them to continue education, can't afford to continue going to school and pay their school fees and buy their school uniform and things like that. So that's when we kind of started realizing, to ensure a brighter future for the girls after they've gone through our program, empowering the parents to be able to do some of these things is really helpful. But yeah, all that to say, I'm definitely not an expert. I'm grateful to have Kayla on our board and contribute some some creative thoughts from time to time, but it's also cool to connect with you guys, and yeah, maybe you can throw a few ideas our way, because we're definitely open to just doing things better, doing new things. So
We do have a connection with Greg Nibbs, who's a great permaculturist, and he's got a project um, in Africa as well, but it's basically this school that they call Rainbow Ridge. So we can definitely connect you, and it's arid as well, I think. So it has probably a lot of the similar solutions, as far as how you can set things up so they're more resilient and just maybe more holistic in some ways.
And I guess one question I was wondering is just sourcing. How did you find all that, the fruit trees and all that? You had to go out of country, or was it just smaller things from seed or from cuttings? Or was that a challenge finding that stuff? I know you were surprised finding the other seeds, but just curious how hard it is to find that stuff if most people are growing tobacco.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely, kind of a lot of nurseries, even within our small community, relatively small community of 35,000 people, compared to the capital city of about 1 million. There's definitely, people that are just kind of, I'm assuming they just kind of grow, a new mango tree. And when it's about, a foot tall, or any type of seed, they'll grow it. And then, they'll cut a mature tree branch off, and then kind of wrap it with plastic and just graft it in. And so that's a lot of the trees that we got. They they obviously take longer to grow. They're kind of smaller, but they start bearing fruit quicker. But yeah, part of me feels like it is hard to kind of get, you never really know exactly what you're getting. There are kind of more kind of reputable and respected distributors of these grafted types of trees, especially in the long way. And there's even, I think, so this woman, Emma, that we met in our first trip in March of 2011, she was kind of overseeing a lot of stuff. I was going back and forth to Malawi, about 3 months there, 3 months in the States, before kind of while things were under construction. I was doing a lot of fundraising. So she was kind of heavily running and managing all that. And I heard that she went to some kind of government run nursery and got the couple hundred seedlings that we planted, way back, I want to say probably in 2013. But yeah, they're definitely readily available. Those things are very common. A lot of people even just plant them, in their own kind of yard where their house is, and want fruit trees to benefit from. So
They got to be producing a lot. They're 10 years in the ground at this point, right?
Oh yeah. Some are getting pretty good sized. They're not quite as big as I was hoping. I mean, some of them are probably 12 feet tall or so. But part of me feels like if we would have just planted regular seeds way back then, and I heard it takes usually 7 years or so for a regular tree to kind of start bearing fruit. I feel like the regular trees would be kind of bigger, and we'd start kind of getting a greater harvest now, even though it would have taken longer. But yeah, the thought of, man, waiting 7 years before we get to have fruit was hard. So we were like, yeah, we'd rather go for grafted and you get fruit in 2 or 3 years. But then every year you're kind of getting a smaller percentage, to where part of me felt like if we we are looking to hopefully open a second safe home in another part of Malawi, and hopefully 3, 4, 5 just grow over the years. Yeah, part of me feels like we may just go the route of just not doing grafted at that point. But I don't know. Yeah, again, a lot of it just kind of experimental in some ways, because I'm by no means an expert in any of this stuff.
All right. Anybody have any final thoughts or questions before we tell everybody how we can support you and how we can get connected and all that? And it looks like we have some connections with Greg Nibbs, and I'd be happy to answer questions in the future for you guys. Or Brandon would too. Not to speak for him, but I can say so. Anybody have?
I do have one thing, Ian. And you guys feel free to just, if this doesn't make sense, you don't have to address it. But my wife and I recently watched the movie Sound of Freedom. So just curious if that really tracks, and if it really is sort of part of your experience, what they were presenting there.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that happens. I think it's a much more kind of rare form of trafficking, where someone just grabbed off of the streets. But I think at the same time, it's important to depict, even if it's rare, it's important to depict what can and does happen, around the world. A lot of what we experience in Malawi, actually, kind of interestingly enough, most cases of trafficking within Malawi are not for sexual abuse purposes. It's more for agriculture. The vast majority are 7, 8, 9-year-old boys that are being trafficked to work on farms. A lot of times these tobacco farms, with child labor, because it's a lot of times farmers won't pay them anything. They'll just say, well, I'll give you a place to live and feed you, and that's your payment, kind of to work on my farm. And so, yeah, that's definitely most of the cases of trafficking. A lot of the cases of sexual abuse, there was a study done by a Canadian organization showing that 93% of cases of sexual abuse were within a home by a girl or by a man that a girl knows and sees on a regular basis, whether it's her primary caregiver, an uncle or a stepfather or a father or a neighbor or a teacher, just kind of someone within their community. Only 7% of the time was it kind of this, just kind of a total stranger, just grabbing them off the road on their way home from school or something like that. And so yeah, one of our cases of human trafficking was just, a lot of times very vulnerable. This 4-year-old girl, her dad died. I was hit by a car, and then her mother kind of just mentally lost her bearings, losing her husband, and was not able to raise her 5 children. And so this girl, the 4-year-old, was the youngest. So the uncle comes to the funeral and kind of sees the mom in this, kind of bad state, having a hard time caring for her children. And so kind of, in a sense, kind of like offers, like makes it look like he's doing something good, and says, why don't I take this 4-year-old off your hands and raise her? And so he ends up taking her and trafficking her, 4 hours north to another city, and she ends up being a sex slave for the next year before neighbors kind of realize that this girl they keep hearing crying in this house. And so, that's kind of one example of trafficking, where it's like, again, not necessarily just someone kidnapping and pulling someone off the streets. Again, not that doesn't happen, but that, cases are kind of more commonly what can even look like an act of goodwill, just out of helping someone come out of a place of vulnerability. Girls living in villages, a lot of times traffickers will go and say, hey, I'll help you get a job, in Ponella, in a bigger city, as a nanny or something. And then it's just coercion, and they deceive them, and they end up getting tricked into, and kind of forced into doing prostitution at a really young age. So yeah, that's definitely more common. But yeah, I also just saw Sound of Freedom about a week ago, and loved it, man. I really did love it. I loved the message, that Jim Caviezel had at the very end, because yeah, I think what he said, just, man, we shouldn't live in fear. We should live in hope, and we should, see this as an injustice, but also be passionate about moving forward and seeing this come to an end, not just be paralyzed by fear. I think was just very important for that to be at that kind of special message section at the end. So, woo, I want to hear a little more from Kayla.
Yeah, Kayla, jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, on this piece of hope, I think there's so much potential in Malawi in regards to transforming the agricultural systems to not be so reliant on corn and tobacco, which then would hopefully have the long-term effect of influencing the exploitation in the country. In Africa, Malawi is kind of a hub of permaculturalists, and not that permaculture in itself is the solution, but this passion for seeing that nature is meant to be abundant, and we shouldn't have food insecurity, we shouldn't have water insecurity, and knowing that there is knowledge within the community to find solutions to those problems. And I think one of the influence of that with our land is the shifting from this the more of a cash crop, low nutrient corn, which you can't change culture. Enzima is part of the diet, like your morning enzima, your afternoon enzima, your dinner enzima. But like seeing what else we can potentially grow on the space that has higher nutrient value and is also good for the land, and allowing the girls to see those systems as well and the community to see those systems. There's so much potential of integrating animal systems as well and training with these farmers when they come into town. Maybe they have all this like money and they have all this time because they're in the city. Like, what if there was a training opportunity for them to increase their abundance? And just diversifying the methods, as you guys were saying, there's just so much opportunity. And Malawians are amazing farmers and have so much knowledge. It's just stepping away from this industrial system that's new, is maybe 200 years in the making, and shifting back to more native reliant systems.